Okay, good afternoon once again to everyone. As promised, it's 5 minutes past 3, and so we start the event. I welcome you today to today's continuing professional development webinar, jointly organized by Cirip and CIB Ghana. You bear with me that when a business stumbles, it is often a banker who first sees the warning signs, and a restructuring practitioner who helps write its next chapter. So today, these two worlds meet, not by chance, but by necessity, because saving a business takes both sound banking judgment and skilled restructuring minds. My name is Petrina Kwe, Marketing and Corporate Affairs Manager at Cirip, and it is my honor to serve as your moderator this afternoon for this webinar. Few housekeeping rules, please. Please, let's all keep our microphones muted during the presentations to avoid any background interruptions or noise. You can drop your questions in the chat at any time you want. And we will have a dedicated Q&A segment later to address all your questions and your concerns. So please keep your fingers crossed and let's wait for the Q&A session. Then we can ask our question. Okay, so straight away, I will invite Sharon Kukwa Gaitwa, Head of Marketing, Member Experience and Growth, CIB Ghana, to give us the opening prayer. Sharon, okay. If you're there, I yield my mic.
All right. So, good afternoon. Okay, please let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We are grateful for an opportunity like this. We are praying, committing today's session into your hands. We ask that whatever we'll do here will become successful, and we'll take in a lot of insights and a lot of learnings. And at the end of the day, we will give you all the glory. We pray for the facilitator, and we even pray for the moderator and everything that happens in this call. And let it be success in Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I was expecting some more amen. So if you unmute and let's all share the amen to show that we are here. Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Amen.
It is my honor to invite two distinguished leaders to formally welcome us and set the tone for today's discussions. First is Mr. Kenneth Garthy, who is Cirip's council member and a lecturer at the University of Ghana Law School. And then we will have Togbe Esiama Krakani V, also known as Mr. Samuel Menu Esiama, the Vice President of the Chartered Institute of Bankers, Ghana. I can see Kenneth is ready. His video is already on. So Kenneth, I yield my mic to you to take the platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Petrina. Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, distinguished guests. As the house rule said, kindly make sure that you have muted your microphone. Because we're getting some feedback from some all right, I think the interruption has cleared now. Good afternoon once again, distinguished guests, colleagues, members of the Chartered Institute of Bankers, Ghana, the Chartered Institute of Restructuring and Insolvency Practitioners, Ghana, Cirip, our resource persons, and all participants joining us virtually. It is my honor and privilege to deliver these remarks on behalf of the President of the Chartered Institute of Restructuring and Insolvency Practitioners, Ghana, Mr. Felix Addo, who sends his warm greetings and regrets his inability to join us personally today. The President has asked me to convey his sincere appreciation to the leadership of the Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana for this collaboration and for their commitment to advancing professional excellence and continuous learning within Ghana's financial services sector. So today's program brings together two professions whose work is becoming increasingly interconnected in our evolving business environment. So bankers and insolvency practitioners each play critical roles in preserving value, protecting businesses, safeguarding jobs, and supporting economic growth. It is therefore both fitting and necessary that our two institutions create opportunities such as this for learning, collaboration, and the sharing of practical experiences. The theme for today's program, Restructuring Distressed Businesses and the Evolving Regulatory Landscape, is particularly timely. Across the world, and indeed here in Ghana, businesses continue to face challenges arising from economic uncertainty, changing market conditions, rising costs, operational pressures, and regulatory development. In such an environment, the ability to identify financial distress early, implement effective restructuring interventions, and preserve viable businesses has become an indispensable professional competency. And this is why we are here together this afternoon. For many decades, Ghana's insolvency framework offered very limited options beyond liquidation, often resulting in the closure of businesses that could otherwise have survived and continued contributing to the economy. However, significant reforms over the last few years have transformed the landscape. The enactment of the Companies Act, Act 992, the Corporate Insolvency and Restructuring Act 2020, Act 1015, and more recently, the Chartered Institute of Restructuring and Insolvency Practitioners Ghana Act 2024, Act 1117, has ushered in a modern business rescue regime that seeks to preserve viable enterprises, protect jobs, improve investor confidence, and strengthen Ghana's ease of doing business. These reforms have also created new opportunities and responsibilities for professionals across the financial services ecosystem. Increasingly, bankers, insolvency practitioners, lawyers, accountants, and regulators are required to work together to support business recovery and financial stability. Similarly, developments under Section 37 of the Chartered Institute of Bankers Act 2019, Act 991, continue to shape the emerging landscape for related banking services practitioners and reinforce the importance of professional competence, certification, and regulation within our respective professions. Today's session therefore comes at an opportune time. It provides a valuable platform for participants to deepen their understanding of the causes of financial distress, practical restructuring interventions, the qualifications and competencies required for insolvency practice in Ghana, and the emerging opportunities within our evolving regulatory environment. As professionals, our responsibility extends beyond understanding just the legislation and regulatory requirements. We must continually invest in our professional development, uphold the highest ethical standards, and equip ourselves with the skills and knowledge necessary to guide businesses through periods of financial difficulty and uncertainty. I therefore encourage all participants who have joined this afternoon, and the numbers keep increasing as we go along, to actively engage in the discussions, ask questions, share experiences, and take full advantage of the expertise that will be shared by our distinguished speakers this afternoon. I wish you all the very best. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. Shall we have Toby Esiama Kakrani V also give us his address? Thank you. Toby, please, I think you're muted. Can you unmute? Okay.
Katrina, if you permit me, I'll just step in for Toby, if that's okay.
Okay, great. Okay. Robert, you're going to do that for Toby, right?
Yes, I'm sure there are a bit of a challenge there. So we would, I'll step in if that's okay. So welcome to this joint CPD event. And for those who are joining us for the first time, this is a collaboration between Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana and Cirip on an important matter relating to our profession and our sectors of operations. At Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana, the mandate that we have is to promote the study of banking, but also regulate the practice of the banking profession. People ask, what does that actually mean? It means developing trusted professionals. It means putting ethics and professionalism high on the agenda of banks and bankers. And by all means, being the thought and talent engine for our industry. And that's why this CPD event is crucially important. It furthers the delivery of that mandate that we have, but to do it jointly with an equally important stakeholder and professional institute like Cirip, for us is an honor. And so we are delighted to welcome all of you to this event. Please, let's make it participative. Let's engage. Let's provide perspectives that can shape our industry and certainly the future of our country. So you're welcome and thank you very much. Katrina, I will hand over back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert, for your welcome. I'd like to quickly take us all through the program outline before we have our first speaker speak to us. So we're going to have two different speakers, one from Cirip and then one from CIB. We're going to have Mr. Gideon Bosompim, Associate Director, PwC, and an insolvency practitioner and a member of Cirip, speak to us on factors leading to insolvency and business restructuring, practical insights for professionals, and pre-qualifications as insolvency practitioners under Companies Act, CIRA, and the Cirip Act. And then after him, we're going to have Mr. Robert Jato, the CEO of CIB Ghana, speak to us on professional competence and emerging regulatory requirements, understanding Section 37 of Act 991 in the context of the Companies Act, the CIRA, and the Cirip Act. After that, we're going to have some Q&As, and then we will take the closing remarks, announcement, and we are out of here. We promise you that we're not going to take much of your time. It's going to be a very beautiful learning experience. I will indulge everybody to stay tuned in. Please do not move. I know sometimes we have pressing needs we need to attend to, but I'll crave your indulgence that for this few hours, please dedicate it to Cirip and let nothing distract you. So quickly, let me introduce our speakers and then we take it up from there. Our first speaker, as I said, is Mr. Gideon Bosompim, an Associate Director in PwC Ghana. And he's a restructuring and insolvency professional with over 13 years of experience supporting private and public sector clients across a range of industries. He has led complex mandates for regulators, financial institutions, and corporates, delivering solutions that safeguard stakeholder interest and restore business viability. His expertise spans corporate restructuring and turnaround, receiverships and liquidations, independent business and financial reviews, and forensic investigations. Gideon has deep working relationship with the Bank of Ghana, the Office of the Registrar of Companies, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and other key regulators across the West African market. He serves on the Cirip Advocacy Committee and holds an impressive set of credentials. Fellow of many associations. I want to skip that. and say that Mr. Bosompem will be taking us through factors leading to insolvency and business restructuring, practical insights for professionals, and the pre-qualification requirements for insolvency practitioners under the Companies Act, the CIRA, and the Cirip Act. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present to you Mr. John Bosompem to take us through the topic I just mentioned. Shall we find a way to applaud him either by blinking our mics or something, and yes, something to let him feel welcome now. Gideon, I yield my mic to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katrina, and thank you very much, everyone on this call. Before I start my presentation, I just want to give some few remarks. I know most of us on this call are professionals in our own right, but then I would just want to reiterate some few points. First is, we know that business failure is always not about poor management, because a lot of factors aside poor management can lead to business failure. So we all need to have that at the back of our mind, that business failure is not always about poor management. Then there are so many things that can cause a company to go into an insolvency or a distressed nature. We all know the effect of global politics that are happening. Some industries can be affected by all that is happening, the geopolitics that are happening, and that can lead to an insolvency or a distressed nature for a company. Then we also need to understand that in some instances, regulatory changes can also result in companies being distressed or being insolvent. There are, and I mean, if you look at the banking sector, to be more specific, there are so many rules or regulations or directives that may result in a company being distressed or going into insolvency. And an example would be, say, if Bank of Ghana decides to raise the minimum capital of banks or SDIs in the country, what that can happen is it can result in some companies not being able to meet that, and therefore it results in. Please, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, Gideon. Yes, we can hear you. I was going to say that you would. Yes, Gideon, we wanted you to do the Mentimeter quickly before you start your thing. So it's being projected. I guess it's been projected. So you can take us through quickly and then, yes.
Okay. So maybe let me just roll it back a bit. What we are going to do here is to not necessarily test everyone's knowledge about insolvency or the topic that we are going to discuss, but we just want to have a sense of what you know about this topic. So if we can request all of you to scan the code, the QR code on the screen, and then once you are all in, you can maybe do a thumbs up, and then we can go through the questions. So if all of you don't mind, please pick your phone, scan the QR code. We only have 6 people, 7, 8, so that we can go through the questions. And also,
okay, so just to interrupt, please, the link is also in the chat, so you can just click on it and then start doing it.
Katrina, how many minutes do we have for this?
Okay, we have 2 minutes.
Sure. Okay, these are good responses from participants. What comes to your mind when you hear the word business insolvency? A lot of us are saying that collapse. A lot of us are also saying bankruptcy. A lot of us are also saying distress, financial distress. Some also saying liquidation, losses, business folding up, volatility, struggling business, winding up, collapsed, no cash. Okay, that's nice. It means that most of us are aware about the topic that we are going to discuss. Maybe, Patrina, you can go to the next question. What's the one question you are hoping this session will answer for you? So at the end of the 2 hours of our discussion, what do you hope that this session will answer for you? Practical insights into how to handle insolvent situation, key issues and options to consider in business rescue. Are there adequate options for business rescue financing in Ghana? To appreciate in detail the legal procedure for resolving insolvency of business in Ghana, more about insolvency, how to handle distressed business, to know the signs of insolvency business, winding up process, solutions that can mitigate the challenges, how to handle distressed business, how to handle insolvency situations, institutions. Okay, these are good. Hopefully by the time we are done, you should be able to know some of these things. Key steps to reverse insolvency, how to do away with insolvency, measures to prevent bankruptcy, winding up processes. Okay, these are very impressive. So maybe, Patricia, we can go to the next question. So this question is, were you aware of Section 37, i.e. the related banking services before today? Just about 3 of us indicate that they are aware. 4. Okay. Okay. We also have quite a number of us who haven't heard or haven't seen this Section 37 before today. Others are also not sure what Section 37 is all about. We have quite a number, so maybe if we can answer so that at least we get to know whether most of us are aware. But from what we have here, about 14 of us are not aware, just about 7 of us are aware. Not sure is about 5. So if you add that to no, we are in the 20s. Okay, so hopefully by the time we are done, we should get to know more about the Section 37. So maybe Petunia, you can go to the next. In one word, what should Section 37 achieve for Ghana's banking sector? Stability, ethics, trust. Resilience.
The ones.
So a lot of us would want Section 37 to achieve stability in the Ghana's banking sector. A lot of us want stability. Also, some of us are not sure and then also have no idea about this. So they don't know what it should achieve. But hopefully by the time we are done, this question would have been answered. Okay, so stability seems to be the key thing that would want Section 37 to achieve in the banking sector. Okay, Petunia, we can go to the next question.
Okay, so you can proceed to your presentation, please.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so I would want to start from where we left off, and what I got to know from the quick survey that was done is that most of us will want to know what causes companies to go to be distressed and then also to go to insolvency. And then how can you resolve issues around a distressed nature of a company and a company that is into insolvency. Hopefully, based on this discussion, we can understand some of these matters. With respect to the Section 37, I believe my next speaker will speak more about it, so I wouldn't go into that. But what we are seeking to do here is to first understand what are the factors leading to insolvency and business restructuring in Ghana. Then let's look at some of the practical insights, and then what are the pre-qualifications. Okay.
Gideon, sorry, kindly unmute and continue.
Oh, sorry. And then we look at the practical insights and some pre-qualifications required before you can become an insolvency practitioner. So my presentation is going to be around these 4 main areas. Sorry, it seemed like the network is a bit slow, so the presentation is taking quite a bit to load. But my presentation is going to focus on what are the objectives of this discussion, what are some of the factors leading to insolvency, and then what are some of the standards expected as an IP, and then what are the qualifications to be an insolvency practitioner. Then we can have some room for some few questions. So at the end of this presentation, what are we seeking to achieve? First, we want to understand what are the warning signs for corporate distress. And then secondly, we look at what are the restructuring tools available under the Corporate Insolvency and Restructuring Act, which is the Act 1015. Then we understand some of the qualifications and license requirements to be an insolvency practitioner. Then what are some of the opportunities for bankers, accountants, and lawyers who mostly form the professionals who can be licensed as an insolvency practitioner. And when it comes to the insolvency ecosystem, these are some of the professionals that assist with whether a company is going under business restructuring or a company is going through an insolvency process. So we can look at some of the opportunities that exist for all of us on this call. So first, let's look at what are some of the factors that lead to insolvency. And this is not everything, but just to go through some of the key things. In some instances, all may be applicable. In other instances, just some of them will be applicable. And like I said at the beginning of my presentation, insolvency is not only about poor management. There are so many other things that leads to company being distressed. And then if it is not handled well, it goes through an insolvency process. So what are some of the factors? Let's look at some of the financial factors. I believe most of us are aware about this because some of these relates to us personally as an individual. You know how much you earn at the beginning of the month. You know what you are supposed to spend. The moment you spend more than what you earn and you don't manage your cash flow well, this can lead to you being distressed, which will end up you going to borrow unnecessarily. And then, so many other things can happen to you as a person. So we relate this to companies as well. Companies must know how to manage their cash flow. Whatever services that they are rendering, they need to know what revenue will come through, what are the expenses, so that they know how much to borrow to assist with whatever payment or expenses that they need to make. Just to put it in a very simplistic matter. So for companies, some of the financial factors that can lead to company being distressed will be poor cash flow management, i.e., if you are not able to collect your receivables, if you have poor working capital management, you are not able to collect your receivables, but then you're also not able to pay people on time, or people who have provided services to you, you pay them on time. What that means is that you are not collecting on time, but you are paying people on time, and therefore there will be a mismatch, and that leads to poor cash flow management. Then once you also borrow excessively, it leads to you not managing your cash flow well, because all these borrowings, you need to pay them back. Then, as part of the poor cash flow management, there is mismatch of debt repayment obligations. You are making a revenue of, say, 10 million, but then based on debts that you have, you are supposed to be paying 11 million, which means that there is a mismatch, and that can lead to poor cash flow management. So most businesses run out of cash. And when we get into, maybe not for this particular presentation, but what happens is that the key test for determining whether a company is insolvent per the Cirip Act, which is the 1015, is about how a company is able to meet its obligations. So once a company is not able to meet its obligations, as they fall due, it results in this distressed nature, or to some extent, an insolvent nature. So if you're not able to collect, or even if you have assets that you cannot convert into liquid cash, and then you are supposed to be making payments out of this, then you can create a distressed nature or an insolvent nature. So these are some of the practical things in terms of financial factors that can result in a distressed nature or financial or insolvency. Then, secondly, what we know is that excessive borrowing can lead to companies not being able to pay their debt when they are due, and which can result in a distressed nature. Then let's look at some governance factors. We in the financial services space have heard so much about things that have gone wrong with other banks. And I believe that most of us, from what we've heard in the media, from what we've read online, from what we've seen, and most companies also have governance factors which are weak. They do not have controls in place. There is mismanagement of so many things that they do. There's nobody to be able to check who is abusing the powers or controls that have been put in place at a company. They do not have a solid board that are able to take decisions and track what is going on in the company. So many things that can happen in terms of governance failure. And that can also lead to a company being distressed or going into an insolvency nature. Then we also have situations where we have operational factors. So let's say, let me give a practical example. Say you are set up to service USAID. Between last year and this year, so much have happened in that space. And that is your only business model. Probably you provide some services for them. And due to what happened in the United States with respect to the new president and they discontinuing the USAID model, what that means is that if you don't have any other model to operate your business, this can lead to your company being distressed or going into an insolvency situation. So for companies that do not have a lot of insufficient business model, that can affect them. Then we all know we either take in resources or personnel to do or to deliver our services. Assuming you are a manufacturing company and you source your resources or raw materials from countries that are currently being hit by wars, what that means is that automatically you cannot get your raw material or whatever you use in producing your services or products. And this can lead you to a distressed nature or to some extent an insolvent nature because you're not able to get what you want. The same thing if you are to export your business to, say, Iran or countries that are being hit by war now, or say Ukraine, and you are not able to export to these countries, what means is that automatically your company is going to collapse, and one way or the other, you'll be distressed, and if nothing is being done about it, ultimately it leads to insolvency. Then the last thing that I just want to talk about, factors that lead to insolvency, has to do with some external factors. Like we mentioned, today, maybe your business model is based on COVID. So 2021, say 2022, you were the talk of town. You were making so much. But then if this changes and nobody is taking the services of these again, what means is that you are not able to do what you're supposed to do, and therefore can lead to instances where it leads to insolvency. Let's say your service or what you do is based on some technological breakthrough, and say maybe you run your business model on the various social media platforms, and touch wood, that social media platform goes down. What means is that you are not able to do what you are set up to do, and therefore it affects you. Like I said, if there are also regulatory changes, Bank of Ghana comes out to say that microfinance companies or savings and loans, we are increasing their minimum capital from, say, 20 million or 50 million to 100 million or 200 million. And you cannot meet this. What means is that it is going to affect your operations, and ultimately you may be distressed, and therefore maybe the regulator may revoke your license. So many factors affect a company or can lead to a company going into insolvency, and they might not necessarily mean maybe poor management, because other things may even be out of your control that will lead to the company going into insolvency. So these are some of the factors that I wanted to share with you. Then let's try to look at, with all these things that are happening, what are some of the key restructuring mechanisms that have been put in place with respect to the Corporate Insolvency and Restructuring Act. And just by way of background, for those of you who have followed the journey of this Corporate Insolvency and Restructuring Act, initially in Ghana, the act that was for this purpose was only Act 180. And it didn't have any provision for a restructuring or turnaround of a company in distress. So if you're a company, you are not able to pay your creditors, or you are distressed to the point that you are not able to pay employees, or you are not able to turn around your business, what means is that a creditor can go to court, they petition the court, and then the court will grant the order for your company to be placed into liquidation. That was Act 180. But this new act, which is the 1015, have other provisions aside liquidation of a company, because we believe that companies should be given the opportunity to turn around their business as they go through some of these phases. So if it is about some financial factors that is causing your company to go into this situation, what can be done to turn around so that you can turn your operations around? If it is about, say, some regulatory changes, if there can be a period for you to really turn around your business, the Act is giving us this opportunity, rather than once you are not able to do it, let's go straight into liquidation. So that is the purpose of the new Act, which is the 1015. So in that Act, basically what the Act is trying to achieve is that when a company is going through some of these challenges and you are not able, or the company is not able to turn around themselves, what can happen is, as shareholders, as a creditor, or as anyone who has vested interest in the company, can apply for an administrator to be appointed to manage the business. What will that do? So once an administrator comes in, they take charge of the day-to-day operations of the company, just so that those who are causing the company to face its current challenges are not necessarily put away, but then sort of put on ice, where the administrator also comes in to determine what can be done to turn around the company. And the Act gives some room. I mean, mostly it is not that a long period, because the administrator is supposed to assess whether the company is even viable or not. So what that means is that that person who is coming in needs to be that knowledgeable, needs to understand that business, to be able to make a recommendation for whether the company should be turned around, whether the company should go into liquidation, or any other thing. So the Act currently provides that a company can be put in administration, where it is giving some freeze on creditor action so that the company can turn around its operations. Then, out of this administration, the administrator can come out with a restructuring plan for the company. Because mind you, that administrator is in there to do sort of an assessment of the company, whether there is viability in that company. So if the administrator believes that there is viability in the company, they can make recommendation to the creditors that we believe that this company can be turned around going through these particular situations, and therefore grant the company to go through this restructuring phase. And what that means is that that administrator would have come up with how to resolve some of these issues, whether it's a corporate governance issue, whether it's a financial issue, whether it is an external issue. They need to come up with a plan as to how to resolve these issues that are putting the company under distress. Then the last option, which is in some instance, there is nothing that you can do to save the company. And therefore, you need to cut down on your losses by putting it into liquidation so that whatever is left of the company can be used to pay the creditors, at least so that they don't lose 100% or they don't lose 100% of whatever services that they've rendered to the company or whatever claim they have in the company. So that is supposed to be the last option after going through all processes where you think that there's no viability in the company, and therefore you push it to liquidation. So in terms of practicality, what we say is that there is always a life cycle of a company. The time that the company was born, you'll go through some processes, maturity, growth, whatever it is. But then if it is getting to the point that, should I say, the death of the company, you don't wait till it gets to the point that you cannot do anything about it. Don't wait till the company gets into an ICU before you trigger any of these restructuring options. You need to make sure that you identify the distress, what is causing the distress nature of the company early enough so that you are able to turn things around. Because at a point, there is nothing that you can do about it. And you need to cut down on the losses, and therefore it needs to go into liquidation. But before it gets there, you need to identify the stress and then how to resolve them as quickly as possible. And another thing that we also need to be mindful is, because the process involves stakeholders, you need to be transparent with your communication with them, whether being the creditors, whether being regulators, whether being investors. Let's put it in a perspective. We are all, maybe we are a banker or we are in the financial services space. If a bank is going through a distress nature and it is not able to communicate effectively with the regulator, this will cause a problem. And therefore, you need to keep that close communication with the key stakeholders, just so that they understand what processes that you are going through. Then you also need to be mindful that you need to come up with a feasible or realistic turnaround plan. You don't want to go tell, say, maybe shareholders or maybe, say, employees or creditors that, oh, we believe that this company can be turned around. These are the financial forecasts. Once we're able to do this, we will be able to turn around the company so that we can pay you back whatever the company owes you. If you don't come up with realistic plans, what is going to happen is the creditors are going to keep increasing their commitment in the company. And at the end of the day, if the company is to go into a liquidation, they would have lost so much. So today, maybe the total value of creditors' claim in the company is 100 cedis. And I go with the plan to them that give me the opportunity to turn this company around. And ultimately, it ends up, their commitment in the company ends up being 120 or 150. Maybe my plan wasn't realistic. I should be able to give them a plan that will make that claim in the company reduce. Then you also need to ensure that you collaborate with other stakeholders to achieve the success. The directors, they play a very key role because they know the company in and out. They've been there for God knows how long. You as an administrator or a restructuring officer, you are just in there for a period. You may not know everything about a company. You need them to be able to give you valuable information so that you can take good decisions. Then you also, like I mentioned, other players assist in that insolvency ecosystem. It is not only, say, you as a banker, you need to rely on services of chartered accountants or lawyers or any other profession that the company is in, so that you can be able to turn around the business. Because mind you, you are coming in fresh, you need expertise to be able to turn around quickly. So in effect, what we are saying is the Companies Act and then the CIRA, what we are seeking to do is to shift away from liquidation to business rescue, and then so that we are able to save some value from companies before they actually end up in a situation that you cannot do anything about it. So these are the key areas that the new act seeks to achieve. So let's look at, we talk about what the act seeks to achieve. But let's look at, if you pick a person who is supposed to assist companies go through this phase, what are they expected to have? The law is quite clear because it needs to be standard. It needs to ensure that whoever is playing in that field has the requisite experience, is licensed by the appropriate authority, so that at the end of the day, we know that these people have what it takes to be able to turn around a company that is going through a distressed nature. So when you pick the Companies Act, for somebody to be an insolvency practitioner, you need to have the professional competency. In that instance, you need to either be a banker, a lawyer, chartered accountant, anybody from a respected or a relevant association, so that you are only taking in people who have the qualifications. It's not like you're not going to pick people and necessarily train them, but then you are picking people to give them the license because they already have the qualification to do what they are supposed to do. Then it needs to be somebody that has this has experience in insolvency proceedings. Like you may say, it might be an easy thing to say that anybody should be an insolvency practitioner. But mind you, that person should have done this work, should have gone through the process of turning around a distressed company, so that once issues are coming up, they clearly know how to resolve the issue. It is not about going to now do try and error, like some of our repairers do, or even sometimes you go to a hospital and then somebody will give you, or maybe you go to the pharmacy, they'll give you this. If it doesn't work, then they'll give you another prescription. No, you need to have somebody who has gone through that process and knows exactly how to resolve this issue. Then, thirdly, you need to be able to manage whatever has been assigned to you as an insolvency practitioner. Because mind you, time is of essence, quality is of essence here. Because at the end of the day, you are going to convince either creditors, either regulators, or either customers or employees that give me this space, I can turn around this company. You need that. So you need somebody who can manage this caseload and then come up with quality and timely execution of issues. Because time is of essence. The more you wait, the more the liability of the company increases. The more other creditors decide to attach maybe the assets of the company. So you need to be able to manage that and be able to come up with a timely execution of whatever is been assigned to you as an insolvency practitioner. But with all this, you need somebody who has the integrity. You can't just give your company to somebody out of nowhere. That person needs to be objective. They should be able to tell the stakeholders, this is the way that we can resolve the situation of this company. That person needs to be able to have some due care, be able to go through some things and be able to take care of what is happening. Then that person needs to handle the confidentiality of the company to the highest esteem. You don't need somebody who ultimately chat with his friends or her friends and then tells whatever is going on in a company. No, you need somebody who can maintain the confidentiality of whatever has been assigned to him. And then that person should behave professionally, because the various stakeholders need to trust whoever has been assigned that role to restructure or be an administrator of the company. If the people don't trust whoever has been appointed, they are definitely not going to support that person. So you need to have somebody who has the professional behavior and be able to manage the various stakeholders as they go through that process. So with all this, who can be an insolvency practitioner? It is, like I mentioned, it is not just anybody on the street. That person, in the opinion of the Register of Companies, should have the requisite skills and experience. But who cannot? One, an infant. Definitely an infant cannot come and manage your business for you. And that person should not have been found by a court of competent jurisdiction to be on sound mind. Then it needs to be that person. We shouldn't have, how do I put it? If an order has been made against you for certain breaches, that person may not necessarily be able to be an insolvency practitioner. And someone who is a bankrupt and hasn't been discharged cannot also be an insolvency practitioner. Then that maybe you are a director of company A. We cannot appoint you as an administrator or a restructuring officer of that same company, because the idea is that you would have caused the company to be where it is. And the auditor of that company too cannot also be the administrator or the restructuring officer in this case. So let's look at some of the qualifications to be an IP, which is an insolvency practitioner under the Cirip Act. So that person is literally the same, like we've already gone through. They can appoint you as an administrator, a restructuring officer. You can even be appointed as a liquidator. And then the Register of Companies can also be the official liquidator as well. And then you can also be appointed as a receiver manager of a company that is going through some difficulty. So these are things that you can be appointed under the Act. So what the Act is saying is that you should engage in the practice of insolvency. And that person should be a member of Cirip. And it is very key, because at the end of the day, the creditors are taking insurance of that regulator who they trust that has licensed people who can do the work of an insolvency nature or a distress nature. Then, so that person needs to be part of Cirip. So if you are not part of Cirip, this then creates a room that you cannot necessarily be, whether you are an administrator or a restructuring officer or a liquidator. You need to be part of the body which has been recognized by the law to handle this. Then what are some of the requirements to be an IP? Like I mentioned, you need to be a full member of Cirip, and then you should have been issued with a license, a practicing license by the Office of the Registrar of Companies. So yes, you may even be a member of Cirip, but then if you have not been issued a license by the Registrar of Companies, you cannot be an insolvency practitioner. And who are the people that the Registrar of Companies can issue an insolvency practitioner license to? Are people that would have been recommended by Cirip. So what that means is that first you need to be a member of Cirip, who then will be recommended by Cirip to the Registrar of Companies. Then the license can be issued to you. And let us note that anyone who practices insolvency in Ghana who is not licensed by the Registrar of Companies, you are committing an offense and you are liable for a fine. The lawyers will be best to define what 500 penalty units is, but definitely if you act without the requisite accreditation or registration, you are liable for a fine. Then how does the Registrar of Companies go about issuing of a license? So that person who is seeking to be an insolvency practitioner should seek for a certification or license by the Office of the Registrar of Companies, where you need to go through, you need to pay the required fees. That fee, I understand, it changes in time. So once you have that, you should then be able to get a license to be able to operate as an insolvency practitioner. Then, without necessarily going through what the ORC will go through to be able to give you the license, one, you should have been a full member of Cirip, like I've already mentioned. You should have undergone the required training in insolvency. And it is my understanding that this is one CPD that can get you max to be able to meet what is required to be able to be issued with an insolvency practitioner's license. Then you need to also maintain a professional skill and value, because why are we saying this? You need to continuously improve upon your knowledge in that area, because mind you, the laws are changing, business rules are changing, and therefore we don't need someone who will be speaking to, say, a 1980 rules when we are in 2026 and the rules have been changed. So we need to go through a continuous CPD education to be able to warrant the official liquidator renewing your license on a yearly basis. And the license that is issued must be renewed on a yearly basis. The year, we use the calendar year, which is the 31st of every month. So after 31st, you need to renew, and then the Registrar of Companies will go through whether you have the requisite CPD education, you've not breached any rules, then they will renew that for you. Then as an IP, we all know that you are not supposed to practice without a license. Your license can also be suspended if you do anything that breaches the rules of being assigned an insolvency practitioner's license. And then as an IP, you need to display your license in places that anybody who comes to your office will be able to identify that, yes, indeed, you are a registered insolvency practitioner. So maybe what I didn't put here, which I will do before we come to the questions, has to do with what are some of the opportunities that exist for we on this call. Like I've mentioned, you are coming in to restructure a business that is under distress. Let's use an example. You are going into the healthcare sector. Yes, you are an accountant, or say you are a banker. You are going to assist a hospital or a clinic to restructure or turn around the operations because they are facing a lot of challenges. You will need somebody who has experience in that field as part of your team. Because if you are not able to do that, what advice are you going to give your client or your creditors? So you need somebody who has other qualifications aside you. Then say you are a banker, you are going to assist restructure any company. You need someone who is a chartered accountant to be able to help you with the numbers. However the reporting have been done, do they make sense? Say you are an accountant, you've been appointed as a restructuring or administrator of a bank. If you don't know how banks operate, you need to rely on somebody who has that experience and who has that requisite experience in the banking sector to be able to advise you on the meaning or how certain transactions are done in a bank. So for us as professionals, we should see that once we are appointed as an insolvency practitioner, we need to rely on others, i.e. other professionals, to assist us carry out our work. And you cannot definitely do an insolvency related work without a lawyer, because most of the rules, you need somebody to interpret what it means. And then definitely for somebody who is aggrieved by that process, will go to court, and you need someone who is a lawyer to be able to assist you in that process. So I would want to say that opportunity exists for all of us. And therefore, we need to ensure that if we have been appointed or have been approached, we need a complement of other professionals to be able to help us. So let me just give one example as the last statement. So as part of a restructuring, you are supposed to engage creditors. If you are doing that engagement and say you do not have someone who is a lawyer to assist you in that process, maybe whatever you'll be negotiating with that creditor ultimately may not stand the test of time when it is tested against the law. So you need someone as a lawyer to assist you with the creditor negotiation, court applications, and then compliance with the insolvency law. I mean, for an accountant, you need them to be able to assess the viability of the business, and then you need to help them with the cash flow forecasting as well. Then if you need someone to also assist with the independent business review, you need someone with financial or accounting background to be able to help you with that. For bankers, definitely they understand financing better. They are able to tell you, well, maybe this financial obligation of this company or this loan obligation, we can restructure in this way. And then when it comes to restructuring the debt that a company has taken from a bank, you need somebody who understands this, be able to advise you on the best way to go about restructuring of a debt. Then if there are any covenants that the company already has, who can advise you to manage those covenants? You definitely need somebody who understands banking in that instance. And then that person who is the IP, that person can only be appointed as administrator or the restructuring officer, and at the end of the day can also be appointed as the liquidator. So we all complement each other, and we need to see the group as a totality rather than looking at us as individuals. So I will end the presentation here. Petunia, I'm not sure whether I still have enough time. If not, we can pause on the questions once the second facilitator finishes and we go through the general Q&A, then we can answer questions from there. But I'll leave that to you, Katrina.
Wow, thank you very much, Gideon. That was very insightful. Yes, indeed, we'll have a special Q&A time after both presentations have been made. So please rest your voice for us, take a glass of water, and then when we are done, we will allow members to ask questions. Thank you. And of course, I just picked some interesting points from what Gideon shared with us. He says, don't wait for your company to get to the ICU center. Don't wait. What do you have to do? It means you must press the alarm button as soon as you see that you are in distress. And he also emphasized on the fact that there must be effective communication with your stakeholders, of course. When you are sinking, you must let them know. When the prophet is also coming, you also must let them know. And obviously, he's also advised that our plan, our restructuring plan, if the company is viable, must be feasible. You don't just get up to say that I can restructure this company, but come up with feasible restructuring plan. And then he mentioned the importance of the act. I mean, the CIRA and the Companies Act. If you need a copy of the CIRA, you can get some from the publishers, and also the Cirip Act and the Companies Act. They are all there. You may want to take a read and know what he's talking about. And he emphasized that these regulations are here to assist us to restructure or rescue businesses instead of putting them to death. And obviously, the very important point he mentioned here was the fact that if you want to be an IP or if you want to undertake any restructuring job, then you have to be an IP. And to become an IP, the only way is Cirip Ghana. So if you want further conversations on this, please do not worry. After the event, you can call us. We'll give you more information about becoming a member of Cirip. Because even to get a license, or after you've become a member and your license has to be renewed, you still have to come to Cirip. Like the way we are doing this CPD, you undertake your CPD, and then we can recommend you to ORC for your license to be renewed after you have paid your license fee. So thank you so much, Gideon. I didn't want to repeat everything you said, but at least these are very important points that I had to re-emphasize for the participants to listen. All right, so quickly we're moving forward to our next speaker. And our next speaker is Mr. Robert Jatto. He is a purpose-led, values-driven, and impact-oriented leader with over 20 years of multicultural experience in banking, consulting, and education across markets in Africa and Europe. He's currently the Chief Executive Officer of the Chartered Institute of Bankers, Ghana, where he leads the strategic direction and transformation of the Institute with a focus on ethical leadership, digital learning, and policy influence. Robert is a thought leader, a chartered banker, chartered accountant, management consultant, and an educator. So before joining CIB Ghana, he led the financial service strategy and operations practice within management consulting at KPMG Ghana. He also held, can we please mute? Can we please mute? Housekeeping rules still stands. Can we please mute? Okay, thank you very much for muting them for me. So Robert has also held roles as senior accountant, group finance at Lloyds Banking Group, business bank manager at Bank of Scotland, and an associate director at Stanchart, working across London, Lagos, and Accra. He has facilitated numerous board and management strategy sessions across Ghana, Nigeria, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Well, one interesting thing about Robert is that he serves as an observer and presenter at Bank of Ghana Monetary Policy Committee meetings and has led major publications, including the G8 Banker's Voice magazine, a very beautiful magazine and insightful, and the KPMG Banking Industry Customer Satisfaction Survey. He's also deeply passionate about financial literacy, regularly volunteering his time to teach in secondary schools across Ghana. Robert, that's so wonderful of you. Mr. Jato will be speaking on professional competence and emerging regulatory requirements, understanding Section 37 of Act 991 in the context of the Companies Act, the CIRA and Cirip Act. Mr. Jato, you're welcome. Here are your participants. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Katrina. I was muted for a while. Please, can you hear me? Confirm.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Excellent. So, so thank you very much. I'm delighted to be doing this presentation alongside other colleagues who are on the call. I'm sure when the questions start coming, we can collectively respond to same. So thank you very, very much for this opportunity. So I'm presenting on related banking services, a specific section on Section 37. But I think the context is always important, right? And the context is that sometimes the headlines coming from our sector, banking sector, and maybe the broader financial services sector, is not always inspiring. In other words, confidence sometimes can be challenged by the headlines, whether it's from depositors worried about their money or bank fraud involving, unfortunately, sometimes staff members. The confidence then gets impacted. So the headlines sometimes are not very inspiring. If you think about banking broadly, it's essentially risk management, right? Wrapped in some products and delivered with a customer centricity mindset. That's banking. It's a risk management, work or piece of work or profession. But the currency in there is trust. And for us at the Institute, we are quite clear in our mind that that trust comes from character, professionalism, or ethics, if you like, but also competence. And if you think about competence in terms of knowledge, ability to do, skills, competences, the two, if you put them together, you can call the character or the ethics, the moral excellence, and the competence, the intellectual excellence. And all professionals need that, particularly more so in banking. But consequence is also important, and that is regulatory frameworks. Because if you think about banking, you can take the balance sheet of any bank, any of the big banks, you see that it runs in excess of billions, thousands of billions. And sometimes you ask, how much have owners put in? Today, the minimum capital is 400 million, but you look at the balance sheet and it's 30 billion. So if something goes wrong, it's not just the owners of the bank that suffer, but customers, innocent depositors, salary workers in KJB or some other place are impacted. And the taxpayer ultimately takes the responsibility, unfortunately. And that would ultimately lead to things like DDP or some other IMF, arrangement. So this conversation is crucially important. And for us, building that trust, that competence, ethics, consequence management will be very, very important for the sustainable future of our industry. In that context, what I like to do very quickly for the purposes of the topic under consideration is look at the mandate of the Institute, Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana, in the context of what I just described, but also the purpose and the background to Section 37, which is enshrining the Chartered Institute of Bankers Act 2019, Act 991. I would expatiate on that a bit more. And the approach that the Institute is taking to implementing that, the competence and assurance framework that we are putting together, for which reason practitioners, whether you are a chartered accountant, you're an IP, or you're a lawyer or a chartered banker, you must lend yourself to. And then, of course, how we intend rolling out from an indicative timeline perspective, and then also next steps of Section 37. So what's the legal mandate of Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana? It's really about promoting the study of banking, but also regulating the practice of the banking profession in Ghana. And I think it's important to look at that in two folds. One is to promote the study of banking, so that's the educational element, but then also the regulatory arm of the institute. For us, that means developing trusted professionals, putting ethics and sustainability and professionalism high on the agenda, but also being the thought leadership and talent engine. And for those who have heard me before, this sounds like a broken record. But that's important because the educational mandate is what you would know us for typically. And we are making some good progress on that, by the way. But there's also the regulatory mandate, which I'd like to speak to you about. So I've mentioned the two folds of the regulatory mandate that we have and under the Chartered Institute of Bankers Act 2019, Act 991. So on the educational front, a number of programs at the Institute. The main flagship program is the Chartered Banker Designation. And you can get that through the flagship ACIB program, or the Executive Leadership Program, which is the Chartered Banker for Executive Leadership, targeted at people in key management positions across the banking sector or other financial institutions as well, but also the branch CEO. And for those who are watching this space, you know, or you'd have heard that over the next 5 years, if you were not a chartered banker, there are some key roles you will not be able to hold. And that's I get some pushback on that, but the truth is, you won't go take a lawyer to defend you in court if that person is not properly trained, certified, and subscribes to a code of conduct. Neither would any of us, subject our bodies to a doctor who is not properly trained, certified, or subscribes to a code of ethics of the profession of medicine. So that is important for emphasis, but also you can get a chartered banker through other access programs. There are other certification programs at the Institute, especially on ESG, environmental, social, and governance certification. And recently, I'll put my camera off if that helps in a bit. So recently, you would have seen the indicative direction that the Bank of Ghana will be issuing licenses in non-interest banking. And as an institute, we are currently running certification programs in non-interest banking and finance. Also, we have ethics certification program developed or co-created with the Bank of Ghana, which is part of the fit and proper assessment if you want to work in the banking industry, but also fraud campaigns, which we are running currently with GAB and Digital Academy. But we also have impact programs. And Petrina, you alluded to that in terms of the financial literacy programs that we run in a number of secondary schools. And by the way, when we go to those secondary schools, it's sad to say that some of our younger brothers and sisters are betting. They bet with their school fees. And sadly, they see betting as a form of investment. We as financial professionals or finance professionals on this call have a responsibility to take financial literacy to our brothers and sisters, and some of them our children as well. But we're also addressing that from an impact standpoint in terms of our national banking and ethics challenge targeting university students. And it's a public education dimension of the mandate that we have. And then, of course, each year we have a National Banking and Ethics Conference, but we also have pre-monetary policy service, which gets presented at the MPC. And then we organize, in conjunction with Bank of Ghana, the post-monetary policy seminar as well. So that's broadly what you find on the education and impact side, and the curriculum, which leads to the chartered banker qualification. I'm projecting that now. The intention here is not to go through that, except to say that there are 4 levels from the fundamentals of financial services that every banker must know, to the financial services practitioner, and then the expert practitioner, and the strategic leadership in financial services, which gives you the chartered banker designation. And for those who are not necessarily bankers, but you are practicing or providing related banking services, which I'll speak about shortly, these are competencies and skills that you must have. Okay. Of course, I've mentioned the branch CEO, the Digital Academy, the ESG certification, which we co-created with the IFC, part of the World Bank Group, but also EPA. And as I mentioned, we currently are running the Ethics 2.0, and we encourage those, particularly in the financial sector or the banking sector, to complete this. It is important. The non-interest banking certification I've touched on. So I'll go straight into the regulatory mandate, having gone over at high level the education mandate that we have. And I want to speak to Section 37. Now, the Chartered Institute of Bankers Act 2019 Act 991 provides in Section 37 what we call related banking services. And if you read the Act and then also the LI that supports the implementation of the Act is LI 2434. If you read the Section 13 of the LI 2434, which talks about related banking services, but also the requirement if you want to practice in that area, is for the purposes of Section 37 of the Act, an applicant for registration to provide related banking services shall be in writing, supported by the requisite documentations as prescribed by the Council of Chartered Institute of Bankers in this instance. And that application shall be submitted to the Institute together with the registration fee prescribed by Council. And I think this Section 3 or subsection 3 of the Act and the LI is important. An applicant shall be a chartered banker registered with the Institute, in this instance, Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana, and must be in good standing. Okay, so that gives you some context in terms of what related banking services, the requirement for registration is, and what the qualification must be. Now, therefore, if you think about these related banking services that we are discussing, the Chartered Institute of Bankers Act introduces it, and it's a requirement, as I indicated in Section 37. The legal framework, therefore, really establishes the related banking services as an area of profession that people can practice and requires some recognition and standard setting and ethics and professionalism. And those who completed the Mentimeter survey earlier, you indicated the need for awareness and further understanding, and the need for us to, as an institute, establish that code of conduct, but also professionalism expected in our industry for the purposes of financial stability and the rest. So what does that mean? This Section 37 therefore means that individuals or institutions carrying on the business as described as related banking services must, one, be recognized. And that recognition entails certification and licensing by the Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana. So what's the purpose? The purpose of Section 37 of Act 991 really is to establish some professional oversight and in the area of related banking services. It also ensures that individuals or institutions offering this possess some competencies and subscribe to code of conduct and accountability. So Section 37 therefore authorizes or empowers Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana to, one, define that competency framework and the ethical standards expected of those practicing in this related banking services area, but also establish the certification requirements for such individuals or institutions, and of course, enforce the compliance to same and provide oversight. Certainly where there are violations, apply sanctions and disciplinary measures. This framework, therefore, really is designed, if you like, maybe in the thinking of Parliament, to ensure that there is enhanced trust in the financial service sector, particularly banking, which accounts for 80%, if you like, of the assets of the financial service sector broadly, but to protect the integrity of Ghana's financial sector and, of course, innocent customers and institutions as well. So what is the scope of this Section 37 of related banking services? The section actually identifies the following as related banking services. And I just want to be double sure that you can see my screen, my slides moving. Can anyone confirm?
Yes, your slides
It's
are moving.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, we can see.
Great. So the Section 37 identifies the following as related banking services as subject to regulation by the institute. One is a financial administrator or manager, a receiver manager or debt management consultant, a consultant in banking and finance, a credit management analyst, a trainer in banking and finance, an agency banker, a financial investigator, a trustee, a financial advisor, an arbitrator, a mediator, a conciliator in banking and financial matters, and financial industry analyst. Now, I'm sure that's a lot to take in, but clearly the makers of the law, the legislators, had a view in terms of the need to bring some professionalism and standardization and competencies and ethics into these areas of professional practice. So what problem are we seeking to solve with Section 37? One, certainly one of ethics and professional conduct. And thanks to those who completed, you expected that the Institute would lead that. And one is to ensure that practitioners are subject to recognized ethical codes and discipline in terms of their practice. And for those who know, in 2020, Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana, together with Bank of Ghana and GAB, which is the Ghana Association of Banks, launched the Ghana Banking Code of Ethics and Business Conduct, one that we expect that if we were providing services in the banking sector, or you're a banker or a vendor or someone who provides professional services to this financial sector, then you comply with that or at least be aware of. So we're trying to also address the issue of competencies and standards and the minimum qualification required to practice the related banking services. And for banks and other stakeholders, this is a risk management issue, particularly a way to strengthen due diligence on those who provide related banking services or provide advisory to support the work that banks do, particularly when it comes to NPLs. And NPLs are non-performing loans and others, which are ultimately feed into the interest rates that we all pay when we take loans. So there's a need for us to address the risk management issues. But it's also an issue of conduct, market conduct, accountability, and the Act Sections 37 seeks to create that, but also traceability of people who provide those services to the banking sector in particular. Ultimately, this is to inspire confidence, strengthen professionalism, trust, and integrity, which are, if you like, the currencies that banks trade with. So for practitioners who wish to continue to practice or maybe new to this area, Section 37 applies to that I've just mentioned, but you are therefore required, if you're a practitioner or a service provider in these areas, to do the needful, which is registration with the institute and then also going through the capacity competence assurance framework that the institute has designed. So from an implementation approach standpoint, we are clear that definitely in matters like this, you need a strong governance framework, which the institute under the leadership of the governing council has designed. So there's a council committee of the institute called the Ethics and Regulatory Committee of the institute that has worked rigorously to define the governance framework that would ensure effective implementation of Section 37. And then, of course, there's the need for us to engage as many stakeholders as possible, including those of you on this webinar today. Certainly, capacity building, certification, and licensing will be that part of our approach, and enforcement to be part of that. So it's not just the governance framework, and beyond the stakeholder engagement, building capacity will be important and licensing will be important, but monitoring and enforcement would be important going forward. We do recognize, though, that the intention of the law is not to disrupt what people do on day-to-day basis, i.e., if that's your source of bread and butter. And so for existing practitioners, the governing council through its committee are determined that the transitional arrangement would last for about 2 years. So remember the section that I read to you that says that to practice in related banking services, you must be a chartered banker. Yes, there may be people who may not be chartered bankers, but already practicing in this area. There's a transitional period of 2 years within which you must register with the institute, go through the capacity assurance framework. And for us, that means you can continue to operate within those 2 years, provided you are registered, but you are definitely required to register. And like I said, this is to ensure, the objective is to ensure smooth transition without disrupting what you're already doing. It also recognizes that there are experiences and competencies that some of you would have built over the years, and those will become very needed. From a stakeholder engagement standpoint, there are a number of stakeholders that we have aligned with in the implementation of this, including the Bank of Ghana, the ICAG, the Ghana Association of Banks, Cirip, and we are doing this webinar together with Cirip as a way of creating awareness and as part of the engagement. Just yesterday, we met all the compliance heads of all the commercial, the universal banks in Ghana, explaining this and getting feedback as well. We have engaged the Ghana Bank Association, the Chartered Institute of Taxation, and others as well. So that engagement is ongoing, including today's session. So the competency assurance framework requires that to practice in this area, all practitioners would have to undergo this competency assurance and capacity building framework. And my colleague who presented earlier from PwC made an important point that if you are going to provide a service in a particular sector, say banking, you better have a deep understanding of how banks work. And this is also because banks are not just banks, they are specialized, if you like, public interest institutions, and what we do or do not do have significant implications and ripple effect through the financial system. So the competency assurance is important, and we'll focus on the areas that you may be seeking license or registration for. Certainly, we'll focus on ethics and professional conduct, banking, and in terms of competencies, as I indicated, whether it's in risk management, treasury, treasury management, trade finance, or credit, or any other area, the capacity assurance would address same, but also what the regulatory expectations are. The outcome obviously will be some form of certification and licensing that you may have, and there may be category A, category B licenses that we have considered. So the licensing framework will be focused on individuals who are practicing or firms that are practicing in the related banking services area that we mentioned. For us, this is complementary to some of the things that Bank of Ghana is already doing through the outsourcing directives to banks. So it's clear that Bank of Ghana regulates financial institutions and ensures that there's prudential supervision and oversees that outsourcing requirements. At the Institute, ours is to ensure that if you are providing services in these areas called related banking services, then you are appropriately licensed. You comply with the competency frameworks and standards, but also we ensure enforcement of that professional conduct and ethics. Ultimately, we want qualified people providing services in the areas that we have outlined, but and ensure ultimately the stability of our financial system. So I'm sure you are aware that there are a number of other regulatory frameworks or maybe laws that address matters that may be related to related banking services. So Act 991, and I think what I'm trying to do here is to draw your attention to the complementarity, if you like, of the regulatory frameworks that we have and not conflicts. So if you take Act 991, it regulates individuals and entities providing related banking services, as I've explained. If you take the Companies Act, Act 992, really it creates and regulates companies as entities, right? So your creation as an entity or your incorporation is what gives you the existence, the legal existence as an entity. But that does not actually mean that, therefore, you can provide every services, particularly if those services are in the earmarked areas called related banking services. Of course, Cirip Act 1117 authorizes you as an individual or an institution, if you are an insolvency practitioner or you want to practice in the area of insolvency. And that's important. And if you go back and take Act 930, which is the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act, there are specific approvals that you have to obtain if we're going to do merger or resolution or official administration in the banking sector as well. So these regulations are not conflicting. I think they are complementary in my view. Okay, so what's the rollout plan and indicative at this stage of Section 37? For us, the legal mandate is established as it has been since 2019. What we've done, up to this point is really defining the clear framework for implementation, and Council of the Institute has done that through an appropriate committee. Number of stakeholder engagements, as I've mentioned, have taken place and will continue. There will be some awareness and sensitization sessions, particularly for those who are already in the space. And as I indicated, the grandfathering arrangement will kick in for practitioners who are already there. Then, of course, there will be licensing and oversight and monitoring and CPD and professional requirements going into the future. So why are we collaborating with Cirip, similar to other professional bodies, and why is it important? Why is that collaboration important, or this particular collaboration and joint CPD that we are doing very important? One, it recognizes the important role of insolvency practitioners in the banking sector, or those who provide services to the financial service sector, particularly the banking sector. Certainly, this collaboration strengthens competencies that we require or expect, but also the ethics and professional standards for the areas that you may be providing services in, particularly to the banking sector, but also provides the recognized certification that you may need and the licensing for the related banking services. And ultimately, this collaboration promotes a working arrangement, some operating rhythm between us and Cirip, but also other professional bodies to ultimately strengthen confidence in the financial service sector and ecosystem. So what are the next steps? If you're on this call and asking, okay, so what must I do? Well, we need to look at that from two perspectives. One is what is the institute going to do from today's session, but also what you must do as a practitioner. We'll continue to engage with other professional bodies and implementers across the financial system to ensure a very smooth implementation. We'll continue to engage not just professional bodies, but also practitioners like yourself. And then we'll finalize the curriculum and competency frameworks for the related banking services, and we'll roll same out. For you as practitioners, awareness is important, but also understanding is important. That understanding should be, how do you extract value from this Section 37? Because it's an area of practice that, of course, must be developed even further. And the Section 37 gives you the opportunity to do so. I would encourage you to participate in the competency assurance and capacity building programs. So watch this space for same and registration. Would expect you to register with the Institute for the purposes of license. And the Institute here is Chartered Institute of Bankers, Ghana. So as I bring this to a safe landing, hopefully, the key takeaways will be Section 37 is on related banking services, and I've mentioned them. Act 991, which is the Chartered Institute of Bankers Act 2019, Act 992, which is the Companies Act, Act 1117, which is on the insolvency, are complementary frameworks that you must pay attention to. For us, existing related banking services providers must continue to do their business, but must do so within the regulatory framework defined by Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana and must be licensed accordingly. Section 37 is an opportunity and should be seen as such because it strengthens what we do, but also strengthens ethical standards and professionalism. So together, we can strengthen professionalism, whether it's Cirip and CIB Ghana or other professional bodies. The intention here is to work together for a stronger professional conduct, inspire public confidence, and ensure financial stability, not just in our sector, but also across our economy. On that note, I'll pause and say a big thank you. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Petrina. Petrina, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Petrina. Hello, Petrina. Hello, Petrina. There. Hello, good. Petrina, can you hear us?
Yes. Hello. I think I can. Okay. Sorry, I had a bit of network disruption. Sorry, I had a bit of network. Sorry, I had a bit of So, Robert, thank you very much for that very, very insightful presentation you also gave from the CIB angle. There are a few things that we picked in from there. In fact, your findings on the fact that a lot of school children are engaging in betting is quite alarming. And so I would also join you to emphasize the importance of financial literacy in our schools everywhere, indeed. And then also the importance of the arts you've just mentioned, and you just gave us the scope of where these financial services, what these financial services encompass, including financial administrator or manager, recovery manager, debt management consultants in banking, and many, many other areas. So people, I know you have a lot of questions. I know you have a lot of inquiries to make. So I will open the floor for people to ask questions. First of all, the rule is to raise up your hand if you have a question. I will mention your name and then you ask your question. And then also, if you cannot speak, please share in the comment section any question that you want to ask. So I open the floor now for questions. Has anybody got a question?
He says it's an awesome.
Do I have somebody who's raised his hand that I cannot see?
I can't see any. I do hope that people who have questions or provide some perspectives. There is a hand from Charles.
Okay.
Amakwata.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, I think that has been a very impressive presentation. So, congrats to the two presenters. I just want to find out. I want to be educated on the in terms of the rules between Ghana Banking College and then CIB. I want to understand their rules, where they complement each other and then where they differ. That is one. And then on the other one also goes to Cirip. I also want to find out in terms of the licensing that once one becomes a member, does it automatically mean that you have the license, or you have to also continue to go through another process to get the license? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Since the first one was to CIB, I'd like Robert to take that question, and then after that, Gideon will take the third question, please.
All right, so thank you very much. I get this question a few times, and I need to issue a disclaimer upfront, right? Charles, that's a great question, but I sit on the board of the National Banking College, and I'm the CEO of Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana. So that in itself should, give you a sense of, complement or complementarity. But on a more specific issue of how do we complement and how do we differ? Maybe let's start with what the differences may be. One is in 1994, the National Banking College was set up to address certain capacity issues, particularly in the banking sector. And this was something that was needed at the time on the back of some World Bank recommendations. And of course, it then became the baby of the Bank of Ghana to ensure that that institution was set up, right? And done a great job building capacity more from training perspective of people who are working in the banking sector. So training is important, and it's a college for that matter. That's why it's called the National Banking College. Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana, as the name implies, has been in existence for many, many years. It's been in existence since 1963, providing professional banking education, certification, conduct, ethics. We are also members of the African Alliance of Banking Institutes. So if you go to Nigeria or go to Botswana or go to other African countries, you find there are professional bodies similar to Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana. And of course, Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana is also a member of the Global Banking Education Standards Board at a global level. And I'm pleased to say that the Institute last month won the hosting rights of the next World Conference of Banking Institutes, which will take place in 2028. And so I'm extending that invitation straight away to all of you who are on this call. So you see the structure of Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana mandated by an act of parliament to do a specific thing, which is to promote the study of banking, certification, regulation of conduct, ethics, and professionalism. And we are talking about related banking services as an area of regulation as well. Ultimately, whether it's NBC or CIB Ghana, the intention is to ensure that we have the appropriate human capital with appropriate skills and capabilities to do what people are required to do. So if you think about a professional body like Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana in terms of maybe accountancy, you can mention the likes of ICA or CIMA or the others. You can also then mention a training school of ICA, for example, or any other institution that provides accountancy training for accountants. Those two are separate. So the professional body is not the same as the institution providing the training for, accountant, even though they may be providing the same similar services. But I think the difference or the differentiation must be clear to you by now, Charles, in terms of what we exist to do, which is to provide certification and ensure people are chartered bankers with appropriate skills. We also provide continuing professional development to ensure that you maintain currency as a professional. I do hope that kind of explains the genesis of the various institutions in terms of the historical perspective, but also what we are focused on in terms of capacity. The institute is very clear in terms of the mandate that we have, and we train chartered bankers. We provide continuing professional development. We regulate conduct. We put ethics and sustainability high on the agenda. And if you are providing related banking services, then there's a regulatory requirement to comply with. And you can be a consultant sitting in some other country or some other sector, to the extent that you are providing services in related banking services to the financial sector or the banking sector, then you come under the regulatory ambit of Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana. I do hope, Charles, that answers your question.
Very well done, sir.
Okay, Gideon, can you take Charles' second question, please?
Okay, so Charles, just to make sure I got your question correct, what you are saying is, how do you become a member of Cirip, and then how do you become an insolvency practitioner? So with that, what the Act, which is the Act 1117, indicates is that for you to become an insolvency practitioner, first, you need to be a member of Cirip, where Cirip has its requirement in terms of how you can become a member. I mean, you can be a student member, you can be a member, you can be a fellow, and all that. But then, if you want to practice insolvency as a practice, then you need to be recommended by Cirip to the registrar of companies for that certification. And what the registrar of company does is that upon your application, they will confirm with Cirip whether you are a member, and then two, whether you've gone through the necessary CPD education, and then whether you've maintained that professional skill within the period that you are applying for the membership, for the practicing certificate. And then based on that, they will prescribe the fee that you are supposed to pay. Then once that is fulfilled, you can then practice practice as an insolvency practitioner. So this is the process that you have to go through to be able to practice as an insolvency practitioner in Ghana.
Okay, so Gideon, I can also see another hand up. Dr. Augustine, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much, Katrina. Are the slides going to be made available to us? That's my question.
Yes, please. The slides will be made available to you. So
Okay.
both speakers, I think they will refine it for your consumption, and then it will be shared later. So I have pasted a link to your feedback. I think if you registered, then it means we have your details. So we will also share. If you receive the information through your institute, whichever institute you belong to, definitely we will share the information.
Okay.
Gideon, somebody is asking. Okay, you're welcome, Doc. You're welcome, please. So Gideon, somebody is asking, how much will it cost to have the license?
Okay, Petrina, unless maybe that amount has been changed, it used to be 2,500 cedis.
Yes. Do we have somebody from ORC here? Is Jones around so that he can give us some clarification? But I think it's the renewal. That is the 2,500 cedis. But I think currently we are not making people IPs because the new act is in. We are now putting ourselves together and run the program, undertake all the examinations that are required to become an IP. So currently, we are not making people IPs. In no time, we will do that after we've properly transitioned from Garia to Cirip. And then you come to the school to, properly get your license. So I hope this helps. So do we have any more questions, please? Do we have any more questions?
Yes, I have one,
yes,
please.
I do.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yes,
please,
thank you.
Sorry,
Yes.
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. My question is more in relation to the first presentation on restructuring businesses. One of the points that was raised in there is the need to have a multifaceted or cross-functional team of experts that would address various aspects of a business restructuring. But I do also know that I've seen instances where businesses are distressed and they have a challenge meeting the cost associated with having these types of teams. And what happens is that the professionals end up being paid and the business does not get back to the point where they should be. What I'm trying to find is the new rules, does it have any guidelines or stipulations that support ensuring that there isn't leakages in that way when we are trying to bring our business back on its feet?
Okay, maybe if I get your name correctly, Venus, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so like you rightfully said, the Act makes provision for whoever is appointed as an administrator or restructuring officer to engage other service, other competencies to be able to deliver on their mandate. But what has happened is, which you rightfully also have said, is that a company in distress, they need to get on board professionals to assist them turn around, and that comes at a cost. So practically what happens is that for you to accept your appointment as a restructuring officer or as an administrator, you need to do some background work in terms of how much fees you think you can draw on the services that you are rendering to the company. And what also happens is because the company also is in a particular phase, what happens is that you need to have a combination of various fee options so that the company can have some breathing room. And what I mean by that specifically is that in some instances, you need to have some sort of a retainer or a success fee component as part of your fees, just so that it is upon when the company is turned around that you are able to draw down on certain fees that are supposed to be paid to the various experts that have been assembled. So practically, whoever is being appointed to do some sort of an assessment to be able to come up with what fee that they think will work in that instance. And mind you, whatever fee proposal that as an expert you want to charge that company is either the creditors or the body of creditors who will go through that your fee proposal and accept, or if it is shareholders who are appointing you, they also need to go through whatever fee proposal that you are presenting, just so that, I mean, there's no leakages in terms of the company or these aspects sucking away whatever few funds that are left for the company. So in a nutshell, you as the practitioner need to ensure that you quote in a way that the company can be able to afford. And then the various stakeholders have, I mean, what happens is they have to approve whatever fee option that you are bringing on board, just to make sure that there is some sort of check and balances in the system.
Thank you.
Okay. I think let me go to the chat button, see if there are some messages. How
Hello?
much is it cost? Hello, who wants to speak, please?
Yes. I would like to find out from CIB concerning the related banking services, the various professionals that have been indicated in there. Does it mean that after the grace period, all those working in the bank, if you're a credit analyst or whatever, you should have been given the license by CIB, and if you don't have it, it means that the bank cannot employ you? in the banking, we have people, playing various roles. We have credit analysts, we have, different kinds of people, working in there. So that's the clarification I want.
All right. So thank you very much for that. So the related banking services is actually institutions providing services for the banking sector. So let's maybe use a firm standpoint. If there's a firm out there providing services in the areas within the scope of related banking services, that firm may not necessarily be a bank or the employees of the bank, and therefore will come under the related banking service. So take a consultant in banking, or a trainer in banking, or the receiver manager. That person may not be working in a bank, but on a more specific one, credit analysts and others, to the extent that they work in the bank, there are approved routes under the main curriculum that such people can go through. But if you are providing service from an outsourcing perspective to the financial sector, then you come into under the regulated ambient of Section 37, or ambit, I should say, regulated ambit of the Section 37. Now, on the specific issue of whether if you're working in the bank and you're a credit analyst, does that mean the bank cannot employ you after 2 years? That's a no. Remember, I've said that this is for related banking services of covering people who are not in the banking sector. If you are in the banking sector, then we expect you to go through either the branch CEO program or the main ACIB program, or we have programs that people take. For example, a credit expert or treasury expert. Those provisions are available that you can take as someone who is already in the banking sector. So you can take that, but the specific grandfathering arrangement is not covering people in the banking sector, so to speak. People who are working in specific banks at the moment. I hope that helps you.
Yes, very well, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I see Benjamin's hands up.
Yes, Benjamin, a quick one. I think Benjamin will be the last question because we've exceeded our time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very lucky. Hello. Pardon me if what I'm asking has been discussed already. I'm in Canada, so the time difference is 8 hours, 7 hours. So I didn't get to join early. Yes, about outsourcing, you mentioned that if the activity or the service is something that could be seen as an outsourced service the bank needs, then yes. So you find a lot of legal practitioners, in fact, law firms having practice area called banking and finance. And most of them, what they do is that they advise on loan transactions. So they sort of advise on both the banking side or the lender side. Now, do those services qualify in terms of what the regulatory framework requires license to be procured? That's the first question. The second question is that if you take a routine work of law, which is litigation, most banks outsource their litigation work to external lawyers. Now, the litigation is not just litigating for the sake of it, but sometimes they give advice as to strategy and things like that. Now, are these categories also courts? So I just want to know whether lawyers in their mainstream practice are required to be licensed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Benjamin, for that question. And thank you for making the time from Canada to join. Thanks. So you would find that the stakeholders that we engaged included the GAB as well as GBA, which is the Ghana Bar Association, similar to other professional bodies that I mentioned we've engaged and continue to engage, including Cirip. Now, rightly so, lawyers provide services in different areas, right? And they bring certain expertise. Now, if those expertise are being delivered within the scope of related banking service, and there are a number of areas that we've mentioned, about 11 core practice areas. If the service is being provided by a lawyer within the scope that the law defines, then yes, the answer to your question is yes, that person must register and be certified to provide that service from a bank's perspective or from the financial sector perspective. So take a lawyer who is providing advice on in let's say receivership, and that is receivership within the banking sector. Then that lawyer must understand how banks work and possess some competencies beyond the law, right? So because that advice is being provided within a specialized institution called banking. And so, yes, that's why we are working with all the other professional bodies, including the Ghana Bar Association, to ensure that there's alignment. And we can cure some of them through the grandfathering arrangement for the next 2 years, or ensure that if it's a firm that is providing that advice, then there are professionals, chartered bankers in those firms that can actually provide those services. Or so if you take a firm approach, then there's an arrangement license around that. If there are individuals providing the service, they may be lawyers, but then there may be a requirement that they need to meet. And we are working with Ghana Bar Association, we are working with ICA, we are working with Cirip, we are working with different professional bodies to ensure a common framework so that we are not over-regulating, but also ensure that there's sanity and professionalism as we expect it. To the extent that it applies to the banking sector, then the answer is yes. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert, for answering the question. I have some questions in the chat. Let me quickly go through before we leave. Somebody is asking how much is the cost to get certificate? Is somebody speaking, please? So somebody says, how much is the cost to get certificates for the CPD training? Please, the CPD is free, so you don't need to pay anything to get your certificate. So in the meantime, if you want to become a member, are you required to write any exams? Okay, so let me use the opportunity to also clarify something I mentioned not quite long ago about the fact that we're not making IPs. So if most of you are aware that we used to be Garia, and now we've transitioned to become Cirip after the Act 1117. So in terms of that, we are now setting up our council. Please, can we mute Baku? Thank you. So we are now setting up our council, or let me say we are now inaugurated. The council has already been set up. We are waiting for it to be inaugurated. And when the council is inaugurated, all the processes that are required to take up the exam, to go through the certification and everything to become an IP will then follow suit. So now what you can do is to become a member of Cirip. And to become a member, you can contact any of us here. My colleague Hansen has just left a number in the chat box. Please pick up the number and call us. You can become a member of Cirip. We'll take you through all the it's not any cumbersome process, but we'll just let you know what is required of you to become a member of Cirip. Another person says, I want to be a member. I am a member of the Institute of ICH. Okay, please, how do I join? Okay, so that question has been answered. There's a contact there. Please do call, and then we'll take you through becoming a member. And anybody who wants to become a member of any of the institutes here, please do contact us. We will gladly assist you. So as time is fast spent, I will quickly go on to invite Robert to come and give us his last words or the closing remarks. And then we take announcements and we are out of here.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Certainly, this won't be my last words. So I'll be here. I'll be that this session for me is an eye-opener for, and we intended it to be so, in terms of the collaboration between Cirip and Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana. And we do hope that you've gained some awareness and some understanding, whether you're looking at it from the insolvency practitioner's perspective or the chartered banker perspective and the related banking services. Ultimately, we'll continue to collaborate. If you look at the governance structure, Cirip, there's a chartered banker on the board. And we are delighted that we are working together to ensure that the financial system is safe, sound, and I was going to say secure as well. And for us, that's a collective responsibility that goes beyond individual institutions. I think it was Harry Truman, who said that it's amazing what you can achieve together if we don't care who takes the credit for it. It's amazing what we can achieve together if we don't care, or we don't care who takes the credit for it. So for us, collaborating with Cirip or collaborating with every other institution professionally to ensure that our system, the banking sector, is strong, safe, and stable is one that we look forward to. And for those who are practitioners already in the insolvency space, I believe that let's do the needful to ensure we revive and resuscitate institutions that are distressed. And for us as Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana, will continue to provide the necessary human capital to solve some local challenges from an African perspective, certainly leveraging best global practice. Banking broadly, or banks specifically, require capital. And you can look at that from minimum capital perspective or regulatory capital perspective. You look at it through the lenses of Basel I, Basel II, Basel III, or some economic capital perspective, depending on what the bank strategy is. But we believe the human capital, which is not accounted for on the balance sheet of banks, is crucially important. And coming back to what I said earlier, this business of banking is risk management wrapped up in some products delivered with customer-centric mindset. Trust, though, remains the currency. And that trust is moral excellence, which is ethics, and we are focused on that. Character, definitely competence, which is the intellectual excellence, and conduct, which is the regulatory excellence. And as an institute, we'll continue to support our stakeholders and working together with partners like Cirip to achieve that. So on that note, thank you all. Patrina, thank you, and colleagues here at the Chartered Institute of Bankers Ghana, Sharon, Dr. Edu, and all the others working behind the scene to make this webinar successful. Thank you. Thank you, Patrina. Mr. Hansen, thank you very much. And I'll hand over back to you, Patrina. Have a great evening.
Okay, thank you, Robert, also for the opportunity to collaborate with your institute. People, please look on the screen. You can find the QR code for the survey, feedback survey. I would indulge you that you kindly scan and fill the form for us. We want to do better next time. We want to know what went wrong. We want to know where your interest is. We want to know whether we have actually delivered what we said we're going to deliver to you this evening. So please do well to fill the form for us immediately. The link has also been shared in the chat, and we will also send it by email or WhatsApp to those who left early. Okay, so some quick announcements, and then we will be out of here. I'll give a few announcements. I will invite CIB also to come and give announcement to their members. We just published our members in good standing, as in Cirip Ghana, in both the Daily Graphic newspaper and the Business and Financial Times. So if you did not see your name, please do not worry. Just give us a call the membership secretariat, and we will sort you out, whatever the problem is. And then if you also have not paid your subscription, please make sure you do so that you don't miss the members in good standing. And secondly, I think most of you heard about or were invited to the NPL forum with the Bank of Ghana. It has not been cancelled. It just was rescheduled to enable us incorporate a survey that IFC did, which is relevant to the subject matter. So we currently are in discussions with the Bank of Ghana to get a feasible date for us to do the event. So very soon we'll be writing back to you to tell you the new dates for the event. And finally, Cirip is 20 years old. Hooray. We have so many plans to celebrate this 20th anniversary. It's going to be in October, so please be on the lookout. We're going to share all the activities that we're going to undertake in this anniversary month. Of course, October is the Cirip month, so we're going to do all these activities here. So on behalf of Cirip Ghana and CIB Ghana, I'd like to say a heartfelt thank you to our speakers, Mr. Gideon Bosompem and Mr. Robert Jato, for so generously sharing your time, your expertise with us today. And thank you, Mr. Kenneth Gate, for opening the event for us. And I'd like to thank everybody. I know Robert has mentioned some names already. Indeed, it took the efforts of a team to come up with this. And I want to thank everybody, Cirip staff, Emmanuel, Ivy, Gabriel, and all other people who supported, including the CIB staff also. So let me hand over to Sharon. Sharon, please give us your announcement, and then we are out of here. Hi, Sharon, are you there? Hello, Sharon?
Yes, hello. Sorry, I went off. Sorry. So thank you very much, Petrina. Thank you all for the presentation. It was really insightful. I think my CEO has actually mentioned some of the things, some of the programs that we offer. We're currently having the non-interest banking and finance program going on. We also have our ESG certification, and we shared our various numbers on the platform for you to call if you want to be a member of the institute. We have our chartered bankers program that you can enroll on. You haven't missed out. We have 2 diets in a year. So we have the October diet. And so if you want to be a member, you can actually register with us, www.cibgh.org, and then speak to us too on 05566444257. We would be willing and ready to assist you. So I think that would be the information from our end.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I just remembered, Robert, if Robert is there, I think somebody shared the question in the chat. I'm sorry, I later found out that the question had been asked. I couldn't, it was asking you to elaborate more on the section 37. It says, can Robert confirm if the scope of section 37 is defined in the Act? If not, how far can any services to banks be scoped into section 37? So I think this is from Nathaniel. Robert, can you quickly touch on this one, Nathaniel, as his bonus?
So the question is whether the scope has been defined in the Act.
Yes. And if not, how far can any services to banks be scoped into Section 37?
Well, the Act is quite clear in terms of what the legislators intended it to be, in terms of they've mentioned the specific areas of services called related banking services. So that's how clear it could get. Now, if the question is, what is the definition of, for example, receiver manager or agency banker or financial, administrator or trustee, then we can go into the details of that. But that's what is in the practice guidelines that the Institute is currently finalizing or developing. And once the practice guidelines is available, it will be shared with the compliance officers and the MDs of various banks and and procurement officers as well, so that if you are procuring a service that falls within this related banking services, then that scope is in no doubt. So in terms of scoping of services to the banking sector, how that falls into these related banking services, that will become very clear in the practice guidelines that we'll be sharing. And hopefully those who are charged with the responsibility of making those procurement decisions and compliance decisions arrangements would be aware of that. And that's why we engage the compliance heads. Yesterday, we've also engaged GAB and all the other stakeholders and people who provide these services to the banking sector, some of whom are on this call. And that's why there's the public education ongoing. I do hope that helps. But like I said, the scope is clear in the law. The definition of the specific areas will be in the practice guidelines. Petrina, I hope that helps.
Yes, it does very well. So if anybody has any more questions, do not hesitate to contact us. We will address all your concerns and all your questions for you. So on this note, we bring today's session to a close. I just want to say thank you very much to everybody who took time off their schedules, those who had to postpone their meetings to come and join us for such a fruitful session. Do have a good evening, and we know that we'll bring you more of such programs. Thank you, and good evening once again. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.